They walked inside, the silence between them growing heavier with each step. Neither knew what the results would show, but one thing was clear: their relationship would never be the same. The clinic's sterile scent only heightened the tension. Rasheeda sat stiffly, arms crossed tightly, her nails digging into her skin, while Kirk sat beside her, his leg bouncing anxiously, his expression frozen. They didn't speak, but the silence between them was louder than any argument they'd had. When the nurse finally called their names, Rasheeda stood up sharply, moving with controlled tension. Kirk followed, keeping his distance, as though even the air between them was too volatile. They were led into a room where the doctor, an older man with a professional but kind demeanor, waited. He glanced between the two of them, sensing the storm beneath the surface. "We're here for a paternity test," the doctor said neutrally. "Yeah," Kirk replied, his voice rough. "We need answers." Rasheeda exhaled sharply but said nothing. The doctor nodded and explained the process: a cheek swab from both of them and the baby. Results would come in a few days. Rasheeda clenched her jaw at the mention of waiting. A few more days of this nightmare, sleeping next to a man who didn't trust her. The test took only minutes. Swabs were labeled, and the doctor promised the results would be expedited. But the damage would last far longer. The car ride home was as quiet as the ride there. Rasheeda stared out the window, looking as exhausted as she felt. Kirk gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. When they pulled into the driveway, Rasheeda couldn't hold back anymore. "You better hope you're right," she said quietly, her voice simmering with anger. Kirk sighed, rubbing his temple. "Rasheeda, no." She cut him off. "You made your choice. You chose to doubt me. So now you better pray you weren't wrong, because if you were," she laughed bitterly, "we're done." Kirk flinched, the weight of her words hitting him hard. "Rasheeda, don't do this." She scoffed, throwing the car door open. "I'm not doing anything. You did this." She slammed the door behind her and stormed into the house. The days that followed were worse. The tension in the house was unbearable. Rasheeda barely spoke to Kirk, interacting only when necessary. When she wasn't in their bedroom, she was in the baby's room, softly rocking the child and whispering reassurances. Kirk felt trapped in his own home, guilt gnawing at him, but doubt still lingered in his mind. He tried escaping to the studio, but word had spread. "Man, what the hell are you doing?" Stevie asked, shaking his head. "A paternity test on your own wife." Kirk sighed heavily. "You don't get it." "Nah, I get it," Stevie shot back. "You're treating Rasheeda like she's some random chick. She held you down, man, and now you're questioning her?" Kirk clenched his jaw but didn't respond because deep down, he knew Stevie was right. Meanwhile, Rasheeda faced her own storm. She had tried to handle the situation quietly, but word got out. Soon, social media was ablaze. People who had once defended Kirk were now tearing him apart. "The audacity," one comment read. "Rasheeda should leave him after this." The backlash was harsh, and Rasheeda watched it unfold, her stomach in knots. She hated that their business was public, but most of all, she hated that Kirk had put them in this position. By the time the results were ready, things were at a breaking point. The night before, Rasheeda finally broke her silence. "You ruined us," she whispered from the doorway of their bedroom. Kirk looked up, his expression unreadable. "I don't even know if I can look at you the same way again," she said, her voice trembling. "Rasheeda, No," she cut him off, backing away. "Don't act like you care now. You made your choice. Now you've got to live with it." The next morning, the phone rang. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the phone between them like a ticking time bomb. Kirk hesitated before answering. "Yeah," he said, his voice tense. "We have your results," came the calm, professional reply. Kirk's throat was dry. "And?" There was a pause. "The test confirms you are the biological father." Silence. Rasheeda just stared at him, no emotion on her face. Kirk felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He had been wrong. "You happy now?" Rasheeda whispered. Kirk opened his mouth, but no words came. He had doubted his wife, and for what? "Rasheeda, No," she stood, shaking her head. "You broke us, Kirk." And now, I don't know if we can ever be fixed. Kirk's heart sank. For the first time, he realized he might have just lost the best thing that ever happened to him. In the days that followed, Rasheeda barely spoke to him. She moved around the house like a ghost, taking care of the baby, answering calls, keeping herself busy. She didn't ask for his help, didn't acknowledge his presence unless absolutely necessary. And Kirk was drowning in guilt. Every time he looked at her, he saw the hurt in her eyes. He had been a fool, a damn fool. Even their friends weighed in. "I don't know why you're still there, Rasheeda," Bam said bluntly. "This ain't love, this is disrespect." "Kirk embarrassed you again, girl," Carly added. "I thought we were past this." Scrappy, Kirk's own friend, didn't hold back either. "Bro, you really let the world think your wife cheated on you? That's foul." Kirk had no defense. He knew they were right. One night, Kirk found Rasheeda in the nursery, rocking the baby in her arms. "Can I come in?" he asked hesitantly. She didn't tell him to leave, so he sat on the edge of the bed. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Kirk sighed. "I'm sorry, Rasheeda. I messed up." "Sorry," she whispered. "Do you even realize what you did? You humiliated me. You let the world think I was cheating. You let me cry myself to sleep every night, wondering why the man I loved didn't trust me." Kirk closed his eyes. "I was scared. I let my insecurities get the best of me, and instead of talking to you, he shook his head. "I messed up, Rasheeda. Bad." Rasheeda stood up, her eyes glassy. "I love you, Kirk, but love isn't enough anymore." She wiped away a tear. "I'm taking the baby to my mom's for a few days." "Wait, what?" Kirk's heart dropped. "I need time to think." "Rasheeda, please don't leave like this. Let's talk." "There's nothing left to say, Kirk." She walked out, her footsteps heavy. At the door, she turned one last time. "You need to figure out who you are, Kirk. And I need to figure out if I can ever forgive you." Then she was gone. Kirk stood there, staring at the closed door, his chest tight. He had spent years fighting for this marriage, but now he wasn't sure if he'd finally lost Rasheeda for good. His jaw set with determination. "I'm not backing out," he said firmly. "We need to do this." Rasheeda just sighed and opened the car door, stepping out without another word. The walk to the clinic was filled with a tension that seemed to wrap around them like a thick fog. Neither one of them knew what the outcome would be, but they both knew that whatever the results, their relationship was forever changed. Inside the clinic, the atmosphere was sterile, clinical, and cold, much like the mood between them. As they waited for their turn, Rasheeda couldn't stop the flood of memories rushing through her mind. She thought about their wedding day, the vows they had made, the love they once shared. It all felt like a lifetime ago. When their names were finally called, they moved in silence, going through the motions of the test like robots. A simple swab, a few instructions, and then they were done. As they left the clinic, Rasheeda turned to Kirk, her voice soft but firm. "When the results come back, and you find out you're wrong, I hope you're ready for what comes next. Because I'm not sure I can ever forgive you for this." Kirk didn't say anything, just nodded stiffly as they both got back into the car. The drive home was just as silent as the drive there, both of them consumed by their own thoughts. The waiting game began, and the days passed slowly. The tension in the house only grew thicker. Rasheeda threw herself into work, into their kids, anything to keep her mind off the looming test results. Meanwhile, Kirk grew more distant, wrestling with his doubts and fears, knowing that the outcome of this test could either confirm everything or shatter his world completely. Finally, the day arrived. The test results were in. Rasheeda held the envelope in her hands, her heart pounding. She looked at Kirk, who stood across from her, his expression unreadable. "Well," Rasheeda said, her voice trembling slightly, "this is it." Kirk nodded, his throat dry. He could barely speak, his mind racing with what might come next. Rasheeda slowly opened the envelope, her hands shaking. She scanned the paper, her eyes moving quickly over the words. And then, she froze. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she let out a shaky breath. "Read it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, handing the paper to Kirk. Kirk took the paper, his hands trembling as he looked at the results. He stared at the words, his heart sinking as the truth hit him like a ton of bricks. The baby was his. The silence that followed was deafening. Kirk looked up at Rasheeda, guilt and regret written all over his face. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Rasheeda stood there, her eyes full of pain, but there was no more anger, just a deep, hollow sadness. "I told you," she whispered. "I told you you'd regret this." Kirk opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He didn't know what to say, how to fix this. He had doubted her, questioned her loyalty, and now he had to face the consequences. Rasheeda didn't wait for him to respond. She turned and walked away, leaving Kirk standing there alone, clutching the test results that had torn them apart. She finally managed to speak, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "How dare you," she said, her words full of hurt. Kirk stood his ground. "Oh, I dare. I dare because I'm done being the fool, Rasheeda. I know what's been going on. I see the way you act, sneaking off to take calls when you think I'm not paying attention." His eyes narrowed. "And you want me to believe that's my child when I know something doesn't add up?" Rasheeda's whole body shook with rage. This was her husband, the man who had betrayed her multiple times, the man she had forgiven for his infidelities, the man she had stood by when the world turned on him. And now, he had the audacity to accuse her of being unfaithful. The sheer irony made her feel sick. "You think you know," she shot back, her voice rising with each word. "What do you know, Kirk? What proof do you have? You're just assuming things because people are talking." Her chest heaved as she struggled to keep from breaking down in front of him, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Kirk exhaled sharply, rubbing his hand over his face as if trying to keep himself from completely losing control. He was exhausted, worn down from the endless arguments, the sleepless nights, and the doubts that gnawed at him every time he looked at her. "You think I don't feel it, Rasheeda? A man knows when something doesn't add up, and this doesn't add up." Tears burned in Rasheeda's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wasn't going to break, not in front of him, not in front of anyone. She had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together, even when her world was crumbling. "I can't believe you," she whispered, shaking her head. "After everything we've been through, after all the times you messed up, and I still stood by you, this is how you treat me. You just throw me out like trash? Call me a liar? Call me unfaithful?" Kirk didn't respond for a long moment. He just sat there, staring at her with a blank expression. But then, just as she thought he might soften, he hit her with the most hurtful words yet. "I never questioned your kids before," he said coldly, his voice devoid of emotion. "But this one isn't mine." That was the breaking point. Rasheeda felt something inside her snap, and before she could stop herself, she grabbed a nearby pillow and hurled it at him with all her strength. "You bastard," she screamed. "You don't deserve me. You don't deserve this family." Kirk dodged the pillow easily, his expression unchanged. "Maybe I don't," he muttered under his breath. "Maybe I never did." A tense silence fell between them, both of them breathing heavily, both standing on the edge of something neither knew how to fix. The love they once shared felt distant, like it belonged to another life. And then, just as Rasheeda was about to storm out of the room, Kirk dropped another bombshell. "I want a paternity test," he said, his voice firm and steady. "Until I get those results, I'm not claiming anything." Rasheeda's breath hitched. A paternity test? Was he serious? Did he really think she had been unfaithful after all these years of loyalty? After all the times she had forgiven him for his mistakes, this is where they ended up. The tension between Kirk Frost and Rasheeda has reached new heights, leaving fans in shock. Just when things seemed like they couldn't escalate further, Kirk made a jaw-dropping revelation: he is refusing to acknowledge Rasheeda's baby. Kirk is standing firm, claiming the child is not his, and the situation is unfolding in an incredibly dramatic manner. Rumors had been circulating about Rasheeda's alleged involvement with another man, but no one anticipated Kirk would take such a drastic step. He isn't keeping his concerns private. Instead, he's making bold statements, distancing himself from Rasheeda and sending a clear message: the baby is not his. His response is causing an uproar, dividing both their family and their fans like never before. But what led to this? Did Rasheeda admit to something, or is Kirk searching for an excuse to end their relationship? With accusations flying, confrontations erupting, and shocking revelations emerging, the situation is rapidly spiraling out of control. The details yet to be uncovered will leave everyone stunned. The tension in the Frost household had been building for weeks, and tonight, it finally exploded. Kirk sat on the edge of the couch, arms crossed and jaw clenched, staring at Rasheeda in disbelief. The air between them was thick with unspoken accusations. Despite Rasheeda's efforts to calm him down, Kirk remained unmoved. "I don't know why you keep looking at me like that," Rasheeda snapped, her voice shaky with frustration. She was trying to keep her composure, but the stress was overwhelming. "You're acting like I did something wrong when I've been doing everything to hold this family together." Kirk let out a dry, humorless laugh that made Rasheeda's stomach turn. This wasn't the man she had fallen in love with. He was colder, harder, and more distant than ever. "Family? Now you want to talk about family, Rasheeda? Are you serious?" His eyes darkened with anger, the rage simmering just beneath the surface. "You've been keeping secrets, and now you want me to act like everything's fine? I can't do that, not this time." Rasheeda's heart raced. She knew exactly what Kirk was referring to. Ever since rumors about her alleged involvement with another man began spreading, she had been trying to manage the situation, but the whispers only grew louder. The more she tried to reassure Kirk, the more distant he became. The truth was, Kirk had already made up his mind. His trust in her was broken, and nothing she said seemed to change that. "You can say whatever you want," Kirk said, his voice sharp and unwavering. His eyes locked on hers. "But that baby, it's not mine." Those words hit Rasheeda like a slap. She struggled to breathe, the weight of his accusation crushing her. Did he truly believe that after everything they had been through? After years of working on their marriage, through the highs and lows, even through Kirk's own cheating scandals, he was now blaming her? How could he?